There is a possibility that Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 was captured by the United States and then flown to the United States military base on Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is a tropical, footprint-shaped coral atoll located south of the equator in the central Indian Ocean. The United States Navy operates Naval Support Facility in Diego Garcia. Let's do some math. First, read the red underlined text. There was enough fuel in the plane to go 3,000 miles. The distance from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia to Beijing, China is 2,628 miles. The distance from Malaysia to Diego Garcia is 2,671 miles. Almost exactly the same distance. Sighting of the plane came in at 6:15 in the Maldives. The timelines match up perfectly from last known contact at 1:21. MH370 may be located at Diego Garcia at this time, and will be reflown and crash into ocean at a later date. Here's some more information about Diego Garcia. It is a US military and intelligence base. The island has remained under a cloud of secrecy for decades. Island of Shame, a book written by an anthropologist, Assoc Prof. David Vine, details how the base was a little-known launchpad for the US wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and may house a top-secret CIA prison, where terror suspects are interrogated and tortured. Drawing on interviews with Washington insiders and military strategists, Vine's book claims to expose the secret history of Diego Garcia, and also chronicles the story of the island's native inhabitants, who were exiled and reportedly continue to fight to return to their homeland. Access to the island is restricted and a permit is required in advance of travel. There are no commercial flights and permits are only issued to yachts requiring safe passage. Generally, access to Diego Garcia is only permitted to those with connections to the military facility. An American MH370 passenger, Philip Wood, managed to send out an image and voice-activated text, along with GPS coordinates, that traced the phone to a location a few kilometers away from Diego Garcia. While the photograph sent via an iPhone 5 revealed nothing, as it was blank black, the text claimed that Wood was being held hostage by unknown military personnel. This report sparked speculation that MH370 had landed on the US military base, while checks on pilot Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah's flight simulator fueled further speculation. Experts reportedly found Diego Garcia's runway among those Captain Zahari had used for practice landings.
But the Carlyle Group owns another company that has been in the news lately, or rather is behind the news. One of the oddities of the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 is that of the 239 passengers aboard, a staggering 20 passengers worked for Freescale Semiconductor, which, you guessed it, is owned in large part by the Carlyle Group. It has been reported that the Freescale Semiconductor employees were on their way to a conference in China, with the company portrayed as a medium-sized Austin, Texas-based company with a small footprint in the semiconductor industry. In fact, the Carlyle Group and a handful of other mega investors purchased Freescale Semiconductor in 2006 for a staggering $17.6 billion. The media has not only portrayed Freescale Semiconductor as a non-entity, but the Freescale employees on board Flight 370 as low-level workers on their way to a routine conference in China. However, 4 of the employees on Flight 370, according to Austin, Texas-based IntelliHub investigative reporter Shepard Ambella, were high-level engineers that were majority owners of several semiconductor patents shared with Freescale Semiconductor, worth billions. As this patent document shows, obtained by IntelliHub, the 4 engineers each had a 20% ownership of the patents, a total of 80% to Freescale Semiconductor's 20%. That shockingly, the patent was filed on March 11, 2014, 4 days after the plane disappeared. And now that the patent owners are dead, full ownership of the patents will revert to Freescale Semiconductor into the pockets of the Carlyle Group. Edward Snowden revealed that he could wiretap anyone in the world from his Hawaiian outpost at Booz Allen Hamilton, that he and the thousands of other NSA contractors worldwide had access to the whole gamut of the NSA's surveillance apparatus. He could tap into every cell phone, every flight communication worldwide, every spy satellite. Are we to believe the NSA's private surveillance army, run by the Carlyle Group, has no information on Flight 370? Day by day, the story changes. Flight 370 crashed in the South China Sea. 2 Iranians using stolen passports hijacked the plane and flew it to Iran to use it as a weapon against Israel. It was flying extremely low to avoid radar. 1 week ago, the story was that the pilot, Zahari Ahmad Shah, was a political zealot flying to meet up with the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now the story is that the plane is at the bottom of the Indian Ocean off the coast of Australia, in which the crazed pilot was out of his mind because of a torrid love affair, that he flew the plane for 7 hours in the opposite direction of the intended route, detected by no one, including the nearby U.S. naval base on Diego Garcia, in order to kill himself and the 239 passengers on board. It's like Lee Harvey Oswald all over again. Instead, this time, it isn't a crazed gunman acting alone, but a crazed pilot. Is this all a conspiracy theory? That the Carlyle Group got rid of a plane in order to reap billions in profits on semiconductor patents? That their tentacles that reach into every aspect of the military-industrial complex, and the media created a fantasy of a crazed pilot dumping his plane into the Indian Ocean?
As the mystery of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, the Boeing 777 bound for Beijing that vanished seemingly without a trace, approaches the 2-week mark, the talking heads of the corporate news networks are becoming increasingly desperate to fill the 24/7 news cycle with meaningless speculation and blather. In their desperation, they have even turned to speculation on a subject long shunned as outlandish conspiracy theory by these very same networks: the possibility of remote control hijackings of commercial passenger jets. The speculation is prompted in part by a report in the Federal Register last November noting that several models of 777, including the 777-200 model used for Flight 370, were susceptible to outside attack. Question mark headlines musing about the possibility of such a cyber hijacking serve to obscure or even deny a very important point. The first such cyber hijackings most likely took place over 12 years ago, on September 11, 2001, using technology that was tested, proven, and available long before that infamous date. Although unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAV, like the Global Hawk, Predator, and Reaper drones used in the US's illegal extrajudicial assassination program, are thought of as cutting-edge military hardware, UAVs of various sorts have been used since August 22, 1849, when Austria launched 200 pilotless, bomb-filled balloons on the city of Venice. Development of UAVs continued with radio-controlled drones and pilotless torpedoes developed in World War I, the creation of the U.S. Air Force's pilotless aircraft branch in 1946, the deployment of military UAVs in the Vietnam War, Israel's development of the first drone with real-time surveillance capabilities in the Yom Kippur War, and U.S. use of the technology in Grenada before the birth of the modern era with the extensive deployment of Pioneer drones in the first Gulf War. When it comes to the remote control of civilian aircraft, President Bush stated in late September 2001 that he would devote federal funds to developing new technologies for combating the threat of hijacking, including remote control technology.
And we will look at all kinds of technologies to make sure that our airlines are safe, and for example, including technology to enable controllers to take over distressed aircraft and land it by remote control.
But even at that time, remote control technology had been successfully demonstrated for commercial jetliners for nearly 2 decades. This is actual footage of a joint NASA-FAA experiment conducted in 1984 at Edwards Air Force Base, in which a Boeing 720 was remote controlled through multiple takeoffs and landings before being crashed in a controlled impact demonstration. In August of 2001, this technology was further demonstrated by Raytheon, which successfully took off and landed a Boeing 727 6 times at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico without a pilot on board.
You know, there's 2 autopilots in all Boeing airplanes. There's the one that they use normally, and then there's the one that used for anti-hijack. And the reason they built that one is so if it was ever hijacked, they could take over control from Boeing and fly it from a little room in there to where they wanted. And they made the steerable actuators, which actually move the controls, instead of the normal 80 pounds where a pilot could take over in case there was a problem, they set it to 150 pounds, which the pilot can't control. And the reasoning behind that is they didn't want the hijacker to be able to say, okay, take me here. And the pilot just said, no, I can't. I have no control. And then, you know, they fly it into base and capture the hijacker.
Yes, I do not believe the murder-suicide hypothesis is accurate. It's very easy to blame dead pilots for an accident because they cannot defend themselves. But there is a viable alternative explanation for what possibly could have happened to Malaysia Air 370, and it's very similar to what happened with the 4 9/11 aircraft, in that all 5 aircraft veered wildly off course. They lost communication, and they also lost their radar transponder that air traffic control used to identify the aircraft. If you Google Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot, the first thing you'll see is a Wikipedia article that's somewhat misleading. It states the stated purpose of this system is to prevent would-be hijackers from commandeering a commercial jet aircraft in flight by remotely taking control of the aircraft autopilot and flight management computers and guiding it to one of many airports in the world and safely auto-landing it. The article is misleading because it states Boeing patented it in 2006. Well, that may be true. we have proof that the technology was developed and produced in the mid-90s. So our contention is that this system was in fact employed on 9/11, but not to hijack an airplane and take it someplace to land it, but to crash it into buildings. And because of the similar flight patterns between the 4 hijacked aircraft on 9/11 and Malaysia Air 370, we actually believe that we allege that Malaysia Air 370 may very well have been hijacked because electronically, because if you look, there's no sign of any wreckage. It's a viable alternative. We cannot prove yet that these systems were employed, but we are working on that right now.